did nothing in the cocoa sector as it accused government of blowing a whopping $10 million on the services of an audit firm owned by a member of the Council of State to audit the cocoa roads and other infrastructure.
$10 million has been paid to one such illegally procured private audit firm owned by a member of Akufo-Addo's Council of State.
We have the latest details from a press conference addressed by the minority today as they raised several issues with the cocoa sector. We'll be interrogating that and fact-checking it as well here on Top Story.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, also brought to you by Gas and Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready. Now, government is tonight being accused of blowing a whopping $10 million in services of an audit firm owned by a member of the Council of State on a clinical audit of cocoa roads constructed under the NDC administration. The minority observed that the Auditor General could have audited the cocoa project but was sidestepped, arguing the move was only to milk the public purse since no single contractor has been indicted for inflating the cocoa road projects almost 3 years of this current administration. And all this is happening as the NDC fights off claims put forward by the president, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, challenging the record of the John Mahama administration as far as the cocoa sector is concerned. The minority called the press conference today to address these allegations and accusations that were leveled against them, and they leveled their own accusations of their own that we'll be interrogating shortly. I want you to listen to the ranking member on the committee, the Agri Committee in Parliament, Eric Opoku, who's been speaking to the media today at the press conference.
It is an indisputable fact that the Mahama NDC administration commenced hundreds of cocoa road projects across the country, completed some and left some at various stages of completion at the time of exiting office. These road projects were aimed at improving the road network in cocoa growing areas and providing access roads to aid in the cutting of cocoa beans. However, upon assuming office, the Akufo-Addo-led government halted 200 of these ongoing cocoa road projects under the guise of conducting a clinical audit. As we speak, after almost 3 years in government, not a single official of the erstwhile Mahama administration or a single contractor has been indicted for any inflated, fraudulent, or ghost cocoa road projects. Instead, what the Akufo-Addo government has succeeded in doing is to waste millions of the taxpayers' money on illegally procured audits, not sanctioned by the Auditor General. We are aware that $10 million has been paid to one such illegally procured private audit firm owned by a member of Akufo-Addo's Council of State. What? And at the right time, we shall make the chilling details available to the Ghanaian people. Needless to say that the government of Ghana has already incurred so much financial loss upon itself through this reckless handling of cocoa roads project. We therefore wish to sound this note of caution to the current CEO of Cocoa Board that we shall hold him responsible for any financial loss in the area of cocoa roads in the future.
Well, my colleague Parker Wilson was at this press conference. He's in the studio with me. Also on the line with me is Executive Secretary to the CEO of the Cocoa Board, Fifi Boaf. Hello, Fifi. Thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
Great. Just before we come to the details and get a reaction to the accusations that have been leveled by the minority, there are further details that they put out today that I quickly want to bring to your attention. My colleague Parker Wilson was there, has a copy of the statement that they put out today. Parker, so let's go into did they provide any other evidence to back their claims that they've done better than the previous government?
Oh, yes. For that, they were able to do so. That is according to the minority. They were claiming that they had performed better than the government. And of course, if you talk about Mahama's achievement within the cocoa sector, is unbeatable. Now, before that, we talked about the allegations
about
exactly
this audit. Did they provide any evidence to that?
So we wanted to know the name of the private firm and, of course, the name of the Council of State member that the minority talked about or alleged, but they were not able to provide that with evidence. What they said was that the focus for the news conference was to list the credentials of the NDC or John Mahama administration when they were in power. So they were not focusing on that. But if you look at the NDC's record, according to the minority, first of all, Eva, let me run you through some of the things they said. And allocation in support of cocoa production. That's what they have to say. That if you look at disease and pest control, between the year 2016 and 2017, when the NDC was in power, they spent about over 316 million. 316,000 on those projects, and the NPP, according to them, spent about 198. So there was a clear difference of about 21% decline. That is according to the minority. And again, they talked about rehabilitation, that is nurseries and seedlings. They spent over 160 million on this project, and fertilizer application, that is high tech, spent about 355 million on this one. So in summary, all what the minority said was that if you compare the NDC and the NDC performed way better
in terms of investment that they put in the sector.
Investment and interventions. They performed better than what the current administration is doing.
Let me bring in Fifi now, Executive Secretary to the Cocoa Board CEO. And they also allege, Parker, they mentioned directly, I just heard them mention directly the name of the Cocoa Board CEO, warning him.
Yes, what they said was that because they failed to invest in Cocoa Road projects, that the government suspended the Cocoa Road project and they said that they're going to conduct some audit into it. Now, because of that, they're going to hold him responsible for any financial loss that will be incurred as far as the Cocoa Road projects are concerned. So when they come to power, definitely they'll deal with him.
Fifi, thank you for your time again. So you've listened to the minority allegations. Let's start with, is the board aware of this allegation that what the minority is calling a legally procured audit, that the alleged 10 million was spent on it and has yielded absolutely no results? Is this something that you're aware of?
I've read the entire statement of the minority. One thing is clear. They did what I'll call touch and leave kind of analysis. Touch and leave in the sense that they mention something, they fail to provide the evidence and say that we'll get back to this one. But of course, the responsibility is on the person who is making the allegation. The responsibility is not on us to provide evidence for what they are claiming to be the case. I can tell you that there was no single contractor who was asked to do the review of the Cocoa Road. It was actually a team of experts from different fields put together to do such a job. I've heard a minority spokesperson on a Greek claiming that the Auditor General was supposed to do this. Well, at the time, a request was made. The suggestion was that a team of experts by their various respective professional associations nominate people to do such a job. And if he's making the claim that the person is a particular person was given that job and for which reason an amount of money has been paid to that person, we'll wait to see the evidence they have. So they should adduce that evidence. Based on that, we can have a meaningful conversation on that.
So what you're saying is that this audit was done, but not done by any individual, as they allege, who is a member of the Council of State?
I have no such knowledge.
Okay. So the audit was done by what? A group of experts, you say?
Exactly so.
Okay. And what did they find?
Well, I do not have the full details of what the experts, what came out with. But the experts were of the view that, one, all these contracts were awarded without a proper assessment of what these rules were. For example, if you look at some of the contracts were awarded at a point in time, they will do variation. Variation is just to say that, okay, well, we didn't anticipate that there will be a need for us to excavate this part of the road. We didn't know there was water on this part of the road. All these assessments should have been done prior to the award of these contracts. These contracts were awarded. So, for example, the cost of the road was to be, say, 10 million Ghana cedis. At a point in time, the price moves from 10 million to 60 million. Variation orders are raised for COCOBOD to pay because they've realized that certain things ought to have been part of the contract, which initially, because it failed to do better assessment of what the roads were supposed to be. So COCOBOD has to pay for any budgetary purposes. Nobody will want to undertake a project where you do not know the cost of the project. Of course, I am not a technical person in the field, but my understanding so far indicates that when these roads contracts are being awarded, they make provision for, say, 10% variations. But in certain circumstances, you have variation to about 70%, 80%, clearly showing that there were no proper assessment before these contracts were awarded. We cannot go on as an institution of state whereby contracts are awarded, you do not know how much they will cost eventually. It's just a matter of just go ahead, do the job, and then it is business as usual. So if someone sits back and say that, oh, it was all well, go ahead and do it, we share a different opinion. For example, there was a clear case of a contract that was awarded under GOG about 17 million. It moved from GOG to COCOBOD. We are told that there were some variations to COCOBOD. It ballooned to over 100 million. And you think that management should have just taken it on board, paid for it without asking questions, without reviewing to be sure of exactly what we're paying for. And they think that by doing so, it amounts to criminality. Well, the decision is for the court to decide, but it's not for any individual to sit in parliament and just conclude.
You just said the court to decide. Should I assume that as a result of this audit, a case is going to go to court against individuals?
No, that's not what I'm referring to. They are making the point that the chief executive will be held responsible. Well, I can only assume that being held responsible is for him to answer for something which they claim he has done.
Okay, but back to the audit. You've mentioned that the audit found that irregularities in the way the contracts were awarded, correct?
What has happened after the audit is that some of the routes have been rescoped, some of the contracts will be re-awarded, some of the contracts have been terminated because of how it was done. That is what I can speak to at the moment. But clearly, for someone to suggest that the wholesale thing that was done at the time, whereby we did not know exactly how much we're going to pay for eventually, we were of the view that as an institution of state, we couldn't have proceeded in doing something like that, which eventually we may run to billions of dollars. So the projected amount of money that was supposed to go into this road construction was actually about 1.7 billion. Eventually, we are talking about $5.1 billion. How are we going to pay for this? And someone is saying that there was no point in trying to bring this thing down, get a better understanding of what the issues are, and be in charge, such that we'll be able to handle it, and it should have been business as usual. Well, we share different opinions.
So you're saying that it isn't true that after almost 3 years, this audit had yielded no results. You're saying that as a result of the audit, you've cancelled some of the contracts, you rescoped some of the contracts as well, and have awarded some of the other contracts to other people who are more qualified to do.
Well, those contracts are yet to be awarded, but I know that those contracts will be awarded per what management has decided on at this time.
So maybe I should just clarify for me. With the contracts that were suspended, what has happened to them?
I heard the minority make the claim that it is only the road that leads to the president's hometown that has been completed. That is actually inaccurate, because other roads have been completed. Because what happened was that some of them, the realization was that at the stage where they were, there was just a need for them to complete. Some of them, looking at the state in which the contracts were, there was a need for a suspension to review. Other things have been done to different roads based on the nature and the status of the road at the time. So clearly, something has been done. One of the claims they make is that, well, nothing has been paid from 2017 to 2019. That is factually inaccurate. About 900 million has been paid for some of these roads because certificates have been raised. The expectation is that the contractors will be paid, and indeed, some contractors have been paid.
Thankfully, I've just been joined on the line by Mr. Eric Opoku, who speaks for the minority on a Greek. Fifi, kindly hold the line for me. Mr. Eric Opoku, that's the evidence and the facts from the Cocoa Board. They say it isn't true that no contract has been executed and that following the suspension. That in fact 900 million have already been paid to contractors who are working. Roads have been completed, and so your facts that you put out are simply inaccurate.
First and foremost, when did they complete the auditing? Have they even completed the auditing? Where is the report? What were the findings?
No, but before you joined us, he addressed that question.
They have not completed any of the roads except the Apeja Kibi road.
But if you listen, sir, he just gave evidence that isn't true. That they've awarded other contracts and the roads have been done and 900 million have already been paid.
Awarding contracts. We awarded the contracts and they have asked the contractor to stop work. They haven't asked them to go to site and they are not on site. And they have only completed Apeja Kibi road. The rest are still there without the contractors working. These are the issues they are raising. Some contractors are working. Actually, exactly what you're talking about, so that your listeners, including yourself, will check on it. That is not true.
Now
you should come out to the specifics.
Now, but you are making the allegations, Mr. Opoku. You say.
Yes. I'm giving you the fact.
He just told us that he's already paid out 900 million as part of the execution of these projects. You challenge that too?
Yes. On
the basis of what?
On the basis of the fact that in their own budget submitted to us, they didn't provide for the payment of Cocoa Rose to that team, so they cannot pay that amount.
Hold on for me. Let me check that. Fifi, the Cocoa Board's budget went to the committee. His point is that this amount you mentioned was not captured in it, and so how did you get to spend this and pay it out?
Yes, indeed, Cocoa Board did not make provision for new construction of roads, but Cocoa Board indeed took care of existing contractual agreements that we had to pay for.
Because I'm not hearing you.
I indicated that these contracts had been awarded, even though the payment for the payment of these contracts had been exhausted. But the contract had been awarded, some of them unknown variations, because they didn't actually do what we were supposed to do prior to the award of these contracts. So yes, payments have been made and contractors have completed the work. In fact, I am looking at the document of contracts that have been completed from 2017 up to date, and some of them, the contractors are actually regional executives of the National Democratic Congress.
Give me specifics there.
Yeah. So, for example, he's talking about the fact that no contracts have been completed from 2017 up to date. There's a contract that was actually executed by Big Edu Construction. Big Edu Construction is actually owned by the Western North chairman of the NDC. George Krum Junction to George Krum was actually completed in 2017. Is the Honourable Member of Parliament, by any stretch of imagination, saying that this road actually connects to the president's hometown? That is one of them. I gave you that example for a purpose. But of course, we can give you a number of road projects that have been completed. So if you remember, the Information Minister, just last week Sunday, had a press conference and indicated that some contractors have been asked to go on site to work. And indeed, these contractors are working.
Okay, so this road you mentioned, what is the name of the road? Is it George Krum? Is it in the Western region?
George Krum. It's in the Western North region.
Western North region. Do you have another example of a road project that has been completed apart from this?
Of course, there are other road projects that have been completed. For example, in Intreku Junction to Intreku, this was also completed in 2017.
No.
That's another example. There are examples of even roads that were completed in 2018. In fact, this was completed on 6th April 2018. And to the Pepesu Junction to the Pepesu, that's 5 kilometers. That part of the stretch has been complete. It's not the entire project. And you see, one interesting thing that also happened with these road constructions. For example, you can have a road, say, from the Kwasi to National Theatre, and you may have part of the road given to a contractor, do this part of the road, for example, do drains, another contractor awarded a contract to do another part of the road, another contractor awarded to do. It was quite confusing as to what exactly was happening. So there was a need for us to make sure that the right thing is done, there's clarity, and you know exactly who is doing what at what point in time.
Yeah, hold on for me, Fifi. Mr. Rikopoku, he just mentioned specifics of some roads other than the one you mentioned that you say leads to the president's hometown that has been complete.
My brother, some of these roads were completed before we leave office. The roads he's talking about, let me give you a vivid explanation of the issues he's struggling to explain so that the listeners will have a better appreciation. Contracts were awarded and contractors went to site. What happens is that they are paid according to work done on the site. So as of the time we were leaving office, they had raised certificates for payment, and they decided not to pay them for all this while, saying that they wanted to do critical audit. Now that he's saying that they have completed the audit, if they pay them, they will pay them the value of the certificate plus interest on delay payment. Plus interest on delay payment. And that will be for work done on the road. By having left the road to deteriorate for more than 2 years, you have to revalue the road for the same contractor. That is why I'm saying that he's compared some explanation for the whole thing. It is never true. Contractors have not been paid, they are not on site. They have only completed the Apeta Kibi Road.
You keep on saying that, but you keep on saying
about the budget.
Yes.
That was the answer. I didn't hear him.
He says to you, no, okay, but no,
Parliament.
no, he's
In exercising our oversight responsibility, we went through their budget. They did not make that provision for cocoa road.
let me
So where are they getting that money from?
since you say you didn't hear, his explanation is that yes, well, the budget you got would definitely not have captured the 900 million because 900 is not for new projects. It's for existing projects, and that's why it wasn't part of the budget. Fifi, am I accurately representing what you said?
Exactly, but you see, he's struggling to answer the question.
Beginning of every year,
add more.
coconut is supposed to
Fifi, just a second. Fifi, just a second. Let me just get Eric to finish.
Are you listening?
Yes, I'm listening.
At the beginning of every year, COCOBOD will come to Parliament with what called the utilization sheets detailing how they intend to apply resources of COCOBOD, especially the syndicated loan. And that is the major source of revenue from which all their activities are carried out. We went through the budget, scrutinized everything. There was no provision. So where did they get that money from? Let him explain. Where did they get the money? What is the source of the money he's talking about?
Fifi.
It is surprising to hear the Honorable struggle to justify this or to explain himself on what he said. There are road contracts in his constituency that the contractors have been paid from 2017 up to date. So if it's feigning knowledge,
Fifi, and you have to give me specifics. So you said there are roads in this constituency. Which roads exactly?
There is no contractor who has resumed work. It's never true.
There are roads in almost every constituency which is under Cocoa Board, which contractors have been paid because day in, day out, the contractors come, they raise the certificate, and payment is effected. So
no, the problem is that you sold for $1.3 billion.
It is surprising.
You provided as details as to how you intend to use the $1.3 billion. There was no provision for Congress. So how would you
Mr. Rikopoku
get that money to pay contractors?
Mr. Rikopoku, just a second. Yes, just a second. You've asked a question. Let him answer. Fifi.
Thank you very much. Yes, I've made a point that yes, no provision has been made for construction of new roads. And I remember clearly when we appeared before the committee, the point was made that we were not going to award contracts for the construction of new roads at the time, which the minority members of the committee raised an issue that, well, there was a need for us to do so. But I have said it repeatedly. In fact, even when we're doing a review of our 2017-18 budget before the same committee, clearly we showed payments made to this contractor. But the Honourable Member of Parliament is still paying knowledge of it.
No.
I don't know what more he wants to know. But clearly,
Excuse me,
evidence.
If you recall,
Please listen, sir.
when you appeared before the committee,
Is clearly
I
available.
raised the issue of
Fifi, just a second. Just a second. Let me hear Eric also.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Eric Opoku, please go on.
Yes, if Fifi will recall, when they appeared before the committee, I was the very person who raised the issue on the cocoa rows. And the CEO's answer was that the roads have been given to highways and feeder roads because cocoa board hasn't got that capacity to continue with the roads. What is he now talking about? That is why I'm saying that Fifi shouldn't try to concoct some of these stories just to deceive Ghanaians. Parliament exists to oversight responsibilities, to exercise oversight responsibility over your activities. You got your budget. We question why you did not make provisions for cocoa rows. And you provided an answer, very convincing, that it is the policy of the government of the day, the MPP government, that cocoa board will not continue with the rows. But you have rather pushed all the rows,
inaccurate.
highways and feeder roads, to handling the rows. Indeed, the Minister for Roads himself appeared before Parliament to answer questions and alluded to the same fact. Why are you now saying that cocoa board is not paying some money to contractors for what?
Okay.
What is it?
So on the roads subject though, and let's clarify this, and the reason why this conversation is important is about cocoa farmers and revenue that we need for development. And so Fifi, address this for me, final question. At the end of this audit, are we going to see real prosecutions with what you found, you say some irregularities, or because of the terminations, that is enough to proceed with the roads that you re-awarded?
Decision for someone to go to court or otherwise is a decision in terms of criminality, decision of the Attorney General. I am not in a position at this point in time to tell you person A, person B, or C will go to court because that clearly goes beyond just saying that, okay, the right things were not done. There should be evidence enough for us to proceed to that point. But the Honourable Member is still refusing to accept the fact that payments have been made. Let me give you actual figures. In fact, in 2017-2018, an amount of 497 million was paid to contractors. 2018-2019, an amount of 414 million has been paid to road contractors. If it says it does not know of this, this is what the facts are.
I'm grateful that you joined us. Fifi Bafo is with the Cocoa Board, is Executive Secretary to the Cocoa Board CEO. Also, you had Eric Opoku, who speaks for the minority on Agric. News Night starts right now.